Are we on? Hello, my name is Joel Z. Williams. Some people in my neighborhood call me the poor people's advocate, and the purpose of this lecture is to respond to a deluge of comments and emails that I've received recently from entomologists and other bedbug experts that are upset with me by disclosing my Phoenix method. First of all, I'm not a pest control operator. I have firsthand experience with bed bugs, and this, I think, gives me some perspective that the entomologists probably don't understand. Your typical entomologist, a person who makes a profession out of studying insects, holds a doctorate degree, and they teach at the university or even private college level. These are people who are pulling down probably $75,000 to $100,000 a year. These are people who can afford to have a professional pest control operator come out to their home and spray. Many of the people that I talked to, the purpose that I created the video for was to educate people who did not have that option. Most of the people that respond to my bedbug videos are usually people who don't have two nickels to rub together, and they're worried about paying the next month's rent. So I take exception when I have people from a different economic background complaining that this method it shouldn't be taught. If you don't know, if you've never been a victim of bed bugs, if you've never been in a situation where you have bed bugs, then you probably should shut up. Very upset about that. And I always put the same question to them whenever they ask me, don't you think you're doing more harm than good? What would you do if your family, your wife, your children were in a situation where you didn't have the money to pay for somebody to come out and spray? You would be looking for alternate methods, and that's what this video series is designed to do. I'm glad I got that off my chest. Now let me back up and preface this by acknowledging their statements. The Phoenix method that I taught back in 2010 when I started this series, the combination of using Clorox bleach and diatomaceous earth, or DE, to help reduce the amount of bed bugs, that method is still viable if you catch it early. If you have a known infestation problem, and you have some money, then the PCO, the professional pest control operator, is always the best way to go. They spray a very powerful combination of drugs, or I should say insecticides, chemicals, that will eradicate the problem quickly, not a lot of problem. And the good thing about that is it usually comes with a warranty. So you'll be able to recall them if your bed bug problem shows up again. Now, people always ask me, why the white hat? Why the videos? I think it's important for you to know my history with bed bugs so that you can understand why I do this. Back in 2010, I was accepted into school in Phoenix, Arizona. I moved from Missouri to Phoenix, Arizona, and I didn't have a lot of money when I moved. And consequently, I had to get an apartment quickly. And I wound up staying in West Phoenix on 19th Avenue and Indian School Road, pretty rough neighborhood, largely Hispanic neighborhood. And to give you an estimate or give you an idea of how predominantly Hispanic the neighborhood was, I remember going to get my driver's license there on 51st Avenue, and I'm in this large DMV, a motor license plate, and I was only one of 5 people in that entire building that was not Hispanic. So that's the neighborhood that I moved into. And I think that's important to know, because I'm going to talk to you about this landlord-tenant scam using bed bugs that I see popping up around the country. I've seen it so far in Tampa, Florida, seen it in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, seen it in New York City, Boston, and I've also heard reports of it in New Mexico. I haven't confirmed that last one, but this is the scam in a nutshell. And I'll just tell you how it happened in the place where I was living so that you can get a better picture of what happens. So like I said, in 2010, I moved out there. I had a conversation with the leasing agent about cockroaches because I had experience living in low-income housing before, and I knew that cockroaches were an ongoing problem. The leasing agent across the table from me assured me that no, they had some experience with cockroaches, but they had a pest control company that they owned, which should have been a red flag to me in retrospect, now that I think about it, that service the units on a regular basis. So I took that as reasonable. I figure, this is a huge apartment complex. There's probably 6 or 7 buildings, 3-story tall each, probably 1,500 to 1,800 units altogether. I felt like that was a reasonable explanation. It would be unreasonable for somebody to have that many apartment complexes without ever having a cockroach issue. I did not remember to ask about bed bugs. Consequently, after 2 weeks of living in this place, I developed bed bugs. I had never seen a bed bug before. And I think, like most people, our conception of bed bugs, we learned from the rhyme, the good night, don't let the bed bugs bite. We kind of downplay the effect of bed bugs. We think, a lot of people who've never had bed bugs think of them something similar to mosquitoes or fleas. They're like a nuisance, but not really a game changer. Not something that's going to prevent you from getting some sleep. That's not true. Bed bug bites hurt. If you've ever been bitten by a full adult bed bug, fully grown, gone through all 6 stages of their molt, and they're fully grown insect, you wake up in the morning, it feels like you got a Charlie horse. It feels like somebody's punched you where they've bitten you. So it's a very painful thing. So long story short, I got the bed bugs and I reported the bed bugs to the landlord. Now this is important because at the time, in 2010, the landlord basically had this position of causality. That's the holy grail of any lawsuit that you would bring against a landlord for bed bugs, is you have to establish causality. Who was the person who affected this thing? Who was the one that brought the bed bug into the building? And because I had moved from Missouri, I was living with my parents at the time, and they had never had bed bugs, the landlord was hard pressed to show that I was liable for that I brought them. So this is a scam. This is how the scam usually works. A person will report this, and then the landlord company or the leasing company that represents the management of the apartment complex will send a professional out to your apartment to verify the presence of bed bugs. Once that person has verified that, yes, you in fact do have bed bugs, then the apartment complex will issue you a 10-day notice to do something about it. They'll say, now that we have established the fact that there are bed bugs in your apartment, your apartment is now creating a health hazard for the rest of our tenants. It is incumbent on you to do something about that within 10 days, or we're going to move for eviction. And so this is how the scam originates. Now, most people, like going back, the reason I told you about the demographics of this neighborhood is the place where I was staying, most of the people there were undocumented workers. These are people who had come into the country illegally and did not want to have anything to do with the legal system or any type of government entity. So they would do just about anything to keep that from going up to the higher channel. Extortion. Now, let me back up and say what happens from a hypothetical point of view. And this is based on a family that, one of my neighbors, we'll just call them the Sanchez's. It was a man, a wife, and 3 small children. From Mexico, poor day laborer. I think he was a concrete worker. Were living hand to mouth. They moved into this apartment in one of the units next to me. Within a couple of weeks, they were just inundated with bedbugs everywhere. Small children walking around with bruises all up and down their legs, all on their stomach area. It was just disgusting. And because he was undocumented, he did not have the ability to go down to the local court and file small claims or bring any kind of action. Couldn't call the local health control, I forgot the name of the agency. He couldn't notify authorities that there was this problem going on. As a consequence, the landlords gave him that 10-day, do something about it. And then the next day, he got a knock at the door, and it's the pest control operator that they own, the company that the landlord owned. And he says to Mr. Sanchez, hey, I understand that you have bedbugs here, and I know that money is tight for you. So what I'll do is I'll work out a deal with you where you only pay $180, and it doesn't have to come out, you don't have to pay it all up front. You can just tack on $40 or $50 extra every month to pay off this bill. And of course, they went with the deal. And this is a characteristic of many types of bedbug scam throughout the country that I see proliferating now throughout the country. Landlords will have a known infestation in a unit of one of the dwellings in their apartment complex, and they will move undocumented people into those units and essentially have them pay for their pest control. Because when you have a bedbug problem, there is no other choice. After a while, you're not sleeping. It is affecting everything you do. It's a psychologically damaging condition that I don't think entomologists really understand. I don't think until you've lived in a small apartment and you lay yourself down at night and you turn off the lights and you can hear things rustling around and you know that they're coming to feed on you. I don't know if the entomologists that bellyache about my videos have ever experienced that feeling of helplessness, that vulnerability. It is the absolute worst. So backing up to the landlord, this system, it's an ideal system. It's a win-win system for them. If they own the pest control company and they have literally an extortion agent, instead of sending like the mafia does when you owe them money on a bet that you made or some money that you borrowed, instead of sending Salvatore and Giuseppe with a baseball bat to come knock in your knees, they just sit back and wait for the bed bugs to slowly get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the infestation to continue until you don't have a choice but to come to them and say, yes, I will take your offer to have that pest control operator come out and you can tack that onto my rent. I did not take that option. I sued. And luckily for me, the legal system in Maricopa County was able to affect some remedy. One of the things that I encountered personally where at the apartment complex I was at, and let me back up and say that we settled that case, and as a consequence, there's a confidentiality clause built into that contract, into that settlement and release agreement, which prohibits me from going into specific details, but suffice it to say, I left happy. That's enough to say. But I started in small claims court. I think I paid $50 to lodge the complaint. I put together my petition, lodged it with the court, and immediately, in anywhere you are, basically, if you file a claim against a corporation, they're going to remove it from the smaller claims court and put it in the circuit court where they can hire attorneys to represent them. And that's exactly what happened. So before I knew it, because you're not allowed to have legal aid or legal assistance in a small claims court. But before I knew it, I'm pitted up against 2 or 3 attorneys that do this, for professionals that do this every day, all day. So just through dogged determination and a lot of help from my professors and instructors, I was able to launch a very successful legal campaign. And in the discovery process, I located the smoking gun. And the smoking gun was a disgruntled former employee of that corporation that said that she was told in a meeting that if anybody complained of bedbugs, this was the policy, is that we are going to do nothing to help them until they come to us and take our deal. If they don't do anything and they want to skip, they want to leave the apartment, we can sue them for what is known as waste in legal terms, the money that was left on the remainder of their lease. Or we can sue them for, in addition to that, we'll take their deposit, usually a sizable amount, $450, $500, we'll seize that. And then we'll sue them for the waste and court costs and attorney fees and all that. So it was a money-making proposition for them. It wasn't where they were trying to break even. They were actually looking at it as a profitable business. And that is what is just so evil about this system. Now, as a result of lawsuits like mine and others in Maricopa County, when you sit down to lease an apartment, the leasing agent is required by law to hand you a brochure talking about bed bugs. So at least it's on record that you had that conversation. And that was so hard, it's such a tough hurdle for me to prove in court that me and that leasing agent had talked about bed bugs. There was all this, well, he asked me about cockroaches. He didn't ask me about bed bugs in particular, where a reasonable, normal person would say, if a person is asking about bugs, you disclose to them every kind of bug. You don't just say, well, you didn't ask me about silverfish, so I'm not going to tell you about that. You didn't ask me about rats, so I'm not going to tell you about that. And that's what it boiled down to, is a little bit of that. Long story short, if you watch these videos, keep in mind that the process from 2010 to now has improved. I've improved. I've done a lot more research. We have a lot more information now. And the Missouri method, which is an improved self-do-it-your-own method, I think is better. It's less toxic. It is cheaper, and I think it has more lasting beneficial effects. So stay tuned. We're going to get to the bottom of it. The white hat. A lot of people ask me about this situation. Back in that time, in 2010, when I developed the Phoenix method, it became popular throughout that apartment complex that I was living in. There were a lot of poor people who could not afford anything, and the Phoenix method worked successfully for them. After about a month or so of that, a group of nuns approached me, and there were 9 ladies. Nuns don't dress like nuns do in the movies anymore, and they were from a local Catholic church, and they approached me. And they represented a lot of their congregation described earlier. They were undocumented aliens. They were very afraid of any public institution. And so the nuns asked me, they gave me $1,200, and they asked me to print my Phoenix method and distribute it amongst the residents in my apartment complex. And they I don't want to say gave me, but this young lady that was a church member, they attached her to me to help assist me because I don't speak Spanish. And so me and her went around and door to door, and as a result, they knew I was going to go door to door, so they bought me this hat. In Phoenix, it's exceptionally hot, especially in the summer, and they bought me this hat. And I wear the hat when I make these videos because it reminds me of the poor people who really don't have any means to fight this problem. And so that's the purpose for the hat. And I'd like to thank the nuns of that parish, and I'd like to thank all the viewers. Please watch the videos, and if you could, watch the commercials, comment, like, put some activity on the site. Every dollar that I get, I put it in a pool, and I start developing more bedbug traps, more educational videos. It just keeps revolving. So the more that you can help me, the more people you will help in the long run. Thank you. My name is Joel Z. Williams. I am the Poor People's Advocate. If you have a comment, please post it to the site. I prefer video responses. I'm out.